A lot of people ask us this question: how do I calculate child support? And then if they don't ask that question, they ask, how do I avoid paying child support? Now, before anybody starts to get angry saying, well, it's a bunch of men who don't want to pay child support, there are also women that ask the same question. I'll be the first to tell you that it's often a bigger concern for men than women, but let's talk about that. First of all, child support is based upon statutory guidelines, and there are some states where you can negotiate child support, and there's nothing that sets what the amount should be. Utah does not have mandatory child support guidelines, but they might as well be, because most of the time the courts will use those and not depart from them, although there is a way to do it. So the first thing you need to know is child support in Utah is based upon the gross monthly earned income of the parties, as well as any other kinds of income other than their gross earned income. Let me give you an example. So if dad has a job working as a janitor and makes $3,000 a month, and mom has a job working at Walmart for minimum wage, even though I know Walmart does not necessarily pay minimum wage, we take the gross income, not the net income, but all the money that gets paid to the parent before taxes, and we use that for dad, we use that for mom, we plug it into a formula, a mathematical formula set by statute, and we figure out what the child support obligation for each parent would be, based upon whether it's a sole custody situation where custody is awarded to one parent, a joint custody situation, which of course would reduce the amount of child support one pays and reduce the amount that one receives. We can also do split custody arrangements where if there's more than one child, you can have one child with dad, one child with mom, two children with dad, one child with mom, that sort of a thing. All of those things will determine what the child support amount that is ultimately paid is, but we always start with gross income. Now, a lot of people do not know this. In fact, some attorneys don't know this, but child support in Utah, although it often will march in lockstep with the child support guidelines, it can be negotiated, and the parents can agree to pay each other less than what the guidelines provide if they can persuade the court that it's not going to harm the children in the process. Now, you can always pay more child support than the guidelines would provide, because they are guidelines, they're not mandates. So I can always agree to pay more than what the child support guideline minimum is. A lot of people aren't aware of the fact that you can also pay less. Now, if your child support obligation under the guidelines was $1,000 a month and you get your spouse to agree to accept $1, there's a very good chance the court is not going to agree to that unless the court sees some compelling reason, such as, well, I'm not going to pay a lot of child support in the form of money, but I'm letting my ex-wife and kids live in a house that I own free of charge. And that's kind of a swap or an offset. But the answer is you can make adjustments. They have to be within reason, they have to be such that they don't harm children, but it doesn't have to be marching in lockstep with the guidelines. If you're curious as to what that is and how that's found, you can look here in section 78B12.210. That doesn't have the guidelines, but that talks about deviation from the child support that's set by guidelines.